come and they go, but as they slip away, I know something else remains. Will it will without the night. I blew it.
You say that it's been 13 years now since you started your contemporary Christian music career. How do you feel that you've grown since that man 13 years ago?
Well, I think musically, just as a matter of experience, I've grown. I think I would have to be a complete moron not to have grown through 13 years, which is possible. And probably some people's opinion is that. But I think just as a matter of things we've gone through, producing the records that we've done and writing the songs, just learning and growing. I think we're making records and writing songs that compete with anything sonically, that just sound good. And like it or not, it needs to sound good to pull people in. When people are rolling through the radio and listening to different things, if they hear something that sounds subpar or you know, I just don't think we should offer things like that. I think we should do excellent work, and we've tried to do that. I think that's happened a little bit over the years.
There is a greater love.
I appreciate music that's married the right lyric to the right music too. It's funny, you could take that lyric and put it with a melody or a musical setting that might be 2 steps to the right or 2 steps to the left, and it's just like, I don't think so. It doesn't work. But I can feel God's hand in people's lives and in their expressions as they write when I hear something like that. It's like another song that's very, It Is Well With My Soul, old hymn, favorite hymn I've ever heard. And it's so strong because the chorus, just one note. It is well, you know, just one note driving it home. It's not complicated and fancy, but it's the right marriage. And as a writer, that's the challenge, to find the perfect lyrical setting and marry it to the right music that's not inappropriate, not too driving and not too wimpy, but not, you know, just the perfect thing. And I think when I come to those places in writing, that's when I feel God's hand the most, because He just sort of brings it all to pass.
Exactly what is your songwriting process?
Well, it could mean a lot of different things to different people. I mean, I just wrote a little book for children based on the Watercolor Ponies song, and that was easy, relatively easy, because first of all, I'm writing for kids. I'm not writing for adults and young adults that are going to analyze lines, who are going to look for the perfect poetry, who are going to look for the same, for just the right attitude in a song, or they're going to prejudge a line, or that's too hokey, or that's real predictable. Little kids, they don't do that, you know. So I'm writing a book for little kids, and it's pretty easy to do because I'm writing simple, and I have a simple thought, and can really think like kids, which scares me sometimes. But I wrote that, and then when I got to the end of the book, didn't have to write any music for it. So it was great. It's like, this is a piece of cake compared to writing songs, you know. But that's one interpretation of simplicity. Otherwise, it depends on the listener, I think. Some people don't like simplicity. Some people like to be challenged, and there are some songs I've done that I think do that as well, that make you have to think. I don't really want people to be able to vacuum and listen to my stuff at the same time. You know, I want them to have to sit and really meditate on what they've heard. Some of it. There are other things that I think they can listen to while they're driving down the road, and it's very clear. There's no mystery to it at all. So it depends on the listener, where they're at spiritually and just an attitude.
happened many years ago. That memory still haunts you though. And who's to blame? You really don't know. You're just locked all alone in these chains. Sometimes it's hard to live at all. The pictures of your history call. Your mind's a decorated wall, but the Lord has a cure for your pain. It's time, come back to the land of the living. Come on to the land of forgiving. Jesus will be faithful to the end. It's time, break the tangled webs that bind you. Let the grace of God unwind you. Give the Lord your broken heart to mend. It's time, it's time. You've had your little victories, but perfection's pretty hard to please. Guilt is an annoying breeze that blows all its peaceful away. Oh, and your life is too short to go on living like this. Wanna brood over who's done you wrong. Yeah, the years pass you by. Look at all that you miss. You've been walking in shadows too long. It's time, come back to the land of the living.
You gotta let it go.
We've been talking about all the songs that you've written. Exactly what is your songwriting process?
I don't really have a process. I don't write until I have to. I'm like a term paper student, you know.
Really?
Oh, it's due tomorrow. You know, I've got to write 10 songs in a week or something like that. I wrote the songs for the Home Free record in about 3 weeks, but they were being processed mentally a long time before that. I'll get an idea for a song and write it down in a notebook. These days it's an electronic notebook, but write it down somewhere where I can keep a good one-line title that just seems to be, The Long Arm of the Lord was something that stuck with me for a long time. It never was a really big song, but it just seemed like a good title, and I think good songs spin off of good titles. And I think God inspires you as a lyricist, but He also gave us a brain to use. I saw a great cartoon one time of a pastor writing a sermon, pastor's office on the wall, pastor writing a sermon. His little boy came in and says, "Daddy, does God tell you what to write?" He says, "Yes, He does." He said, "Why are you erasing some of it?" And, you know, it's like, well, because we have to process things, and God gave us this head to think and to use, most of which we never use from what I hear. You know, the brain lies dormant, most of it. I tend to not be able to listen to songs very well because I analyze too much, my own as well as anybody else's. And so I don't enjoy music as far as just listening, and that really bugs me because I would like to. I remember when I was younger, I would just listen to music, and all kinds. I'd listen to everything from classical to everything. And I was flipping through the radio one day and I heard this old country song on the radio, and there was this guy and he was just kind of talking about being thrown out of a church because they didn't welcome him there. And he got to wondering if Jesus came in that church, I wonder if they'd even let him come in. The way I've heard he looked and the way he dressed, and I wonder if they'd let him come in here. And I got to thinking about that. And we've packaged the Lord as a business in some respects in this culture that we live in. And we've got Jesus so nicely placed in a little box that this is our Jesus and don't you want Him? Well, I just want to make sure if we present Christ to people that we do it in a way that's a true representation of who He is, not one of our interpretations necessarily, not a definition that we've come to on our own account. And I think we're guilty of that sometimes. And I really didn't have an answer to that question. The song Would I Know You starts off with a question and it ends with a question. It's easier to sing than to say. I always hated starting songs. Well, this song is about, I always thought if a song wasn't good enough to tell you what it's about within the song, you need to rewrite it. If you had to explain it, what the lyric means, then you need to redo it. And so I try to keep it where it's understandable from the top. And like I said, this starts off with a question. Would I know you now if you walked into the room? If you still the crowd, if your light dispelled the gloom, and if I saw your wounds, touched your thorn-pierced brow, I wonder if I'd know you now.
So how do you feel you continue to be challenged spiritually and musically today?
Spiritually, I'm challenged by my wife. She'll be glad to hear that. She shouldn't let me get away with anything. It really bugs me.
What do you mean by that?
No, well, I'm an artist.
Oh.
And
Artistic liberty,
yeah.
you think?
I remember the first few years I did this, I'm a musician and I'm an artist and I deserve to be able to throw these tantrums. And she was like, she's a wonderful, soft-spoken, gentle, tender-hearted woman. And she just, without a word, she basically says, no, you don't. We live here too, and just because you're this or that, I mean, this is what the Bible says, and this is what it means to be Christ-like. This is our goal. And so that's what I mean. She don't let me get away with anything. She doesn't have to say a word. She's my conscience. She lets me know when I get out of line without saying much of anything. I know it. And I'm just so grateful that God put her in my life almost 19 years ago. And I don't imply or mean to imply that everybody should be married, but the happiest times I've had in my life have been as a husband and a father.
Somewhere in the world today, a little girl will go out to play, all dressed up in mama's clothes. At least the way that I suppose it goes. Somewhere in the world tonight, before she reaches to turn out the light, she'll be praying from a tender heart. A simple prayer that's a work of art. And I don't even know her name, but I'm praying for her just the same, that the Lord will write His name upon her heart. 'Cause somewhere in the course of this life, a little boy will need a godly wife. So hold on to Jesus, baby, wherever you are.
My boys were in the front yard playing, and there were these little girls riding back and forth in front of my house on their bicycles. And my boys were throwing pine cones at them.
Oh.
And they weren't throwing these little brown pine cones that float through the air. They were throwing these little hard green, little green ones, you know, and doing what boys do, you know. And nobody was getting hurt, and so we thought, I just watched them for a while, and I thought to myself, how long will it be before they put the pine cones down and get on their bikes and go after those little girls? And I laughed inside a little bit, and I also began a new season of prayer in my life for a little unknown girl that God may put in the path of one of those boys of mine. So we pray that even if we don't know who this person is, and as they're getting older, we see them interact with their own youth groups and with girls, and we wonder if that's the one, or if that's the one, or if there is one. And if so, we hope we've covered her in prayer, and we also hope we've covered her family in prayer, that they would teach her what it means to be a godly young woman.
Right, one of the lines from the song.
Yeah, that she would be a person who has not only discovered Christ as a young woman, but that she's known Him as a child, and that she's grown up with the love of Christ in her heart, and that makes such a difference, and would make such a difference to a marriage. I hear a lot of parents that say, we want our kids to be godly kids. We want to have Christ-like kids. We want to be godly, good kids, and that's real noble to say. But if you're not, they're not going to be, because you're the God that they see at first. The first few years of their lives, you're the Christ they see. You're the God that they see. You can say you want them to follow Jesus till you turn blue in the face, and they're not going to follow Jesus. They're going to follow you. So if you want them to follow Jesus, you do, you know. And that's tough. It's so much easier just to blow it off and take them down to the church and drop them off. But it's a big responsibility, so that challenges me as well.
When parents weep, there is a greater love. When children lose their way, a greater love. When wives cry tears pour out. There is a greater love when healing does not come, a greater love when sorrows flow and joy is swept away. There is a greater love. There is a greater love. There is a greater There is a greater love. There is a greater love. There is a greater love.
Just two boys?
Two boys, Neil and Adam.
And how old are
Neil's
they?
the oldest. Neil is now 15 and Adam is 12. Neil found out about girls. He likes them.
Yeah.
We're thrilled. Relieved.
So,
Girls are good.
so I
God
imagine
said they were.
Daddy's praying quite a bit now.
No, God said girls were good, so I think they're good. I love the way people read the Bible about God creating Eve and Adam. You know, He created Eve and people. I heard an old pastor, and God made Adam and Eve. He said, "This is good." I can't see him making Eve and just saying, "Oh, this is good." I'm thinking, "Hey, come look at this," you know. And I think we make things weird that God created as beautiful, and I think that's our problem. We're working through it, but yeah, my boys are just great. I don't wrestle with them like I used to. They hurt me.
Smile, make them think you're happy. Lie and say that things are fine.
Hide that empty longing that you feel. Don't ever show it. Keep your heart concealed. Who's that about? It's about me, and it's about you, and it's about all of us. I get a little amused that sometimes society says, "Oh, we're each individuals and we each have our own little unique things," and that's obvious. I mean, good grief. I mean, it doesn't take a scientist to tell you that. Everybody has these unique, but we have so much in common. You know, we have a lot in common. That things that trip me up trip millions of other people up. The same things that drag me down, drag millions of other people down. And I've tried. I think one of the best things that I've felt as far as spiritual growth is that I'm trying to look for the best in people. I don't know the whole story. I just hope that whatever they're doing is for the right reasons. People ask me about other musicians in Christian music. Well, what do you think about so-and-so? I don't know them. I don't hang out with them. I hang out with normal, everyday folks back home and not music people. And why can't we look for the best in each other? Why can't I assume that there's no hidden secrets in your life or in somebody else's life? Why can't I just assume that I don't know the whole story, but I sleep better at night just hoping and praying that God's using them for His purpose, whether I understand it or not. It's not the issue. I've learned a lot about grace and about what I deserve. I think I grew up in the church and never really flipped out seriously, rebellion. So I grew up thinking I deserved a good shot. I deserved a good break, and I've been good. Psalm 103 is very explicit about what I deserve. God doesn't treat us as we deserve to be treated, the psalmist wrote. He's full of compassion and mercy. He knows we are made from the dust, the Bible says. Just because I've been a good kid, I basically did what Mom and Dad tried to teach me to do. That's worthless. All the works I've done and all the good things I've tried to do are worthless, the Bible says. The grace of God and the blood of Christ for forgiveness of my sin is all that makes me acceptable to my Father. And so understanding that about me helps me understand it about you and about other people I see. And no matter what they're going through, God's grace is sufficient for them as well. So it's helped to soften my heart a little bit. I think most of us are thin-skinned and hard-hearted, and we need to be just the opposite. You notice how people get offended by anything these days? Any little group gets offended. Well, they said this about us. They said this about our group, and our ethnic group here, we get offended when you talk that way, or this group gets offended. So easily offended. Just thin-skinned, and the hearts are bitter and hard and defensive, and we want our rights and all that. When through the journey that God has taken me spiritually, I think it should be just the other way around. I think things ought to bounce off, and words shouldn't really affect us. But our hearts should be soft and breakable when we see people in pain and in need. But I think it's just the opposite. And so that's what I'm praying for me and my family, that we have tough skins and soft hearts. And the calm that comes from it. I don't know why music has such power to do things to you. God has given us a really wonderful gift, and for that reason I feel a great responsibility to be responsible with the platform of music. I've seen music agitate crowds for wrong. I've seen reports and read reports in the newspaper of music agitating a crowd to bedlam, and if it can do that, and it can do the other side as well. It can bring peace and calm. It can break a heart. It can mold, and it can mend a heart.
It was battered and scarred, and the auctioneer felt it was hardly worth his while to waste much time on that old violin, but he held it up with a smile. Well, it sure ain't much, but it's all we got left. I guess we ought to sell it too. Now who'll start the bid on this old violin? Just one more and we'll be through. And then he cried, give me $1. Who'll make it two? Only $2. Who'll make it $3? $3 twice. Now that's a good price. Now who's gonna bid for me? Raise up your hand now, don't wait any longer, 'cause the auction's about to end. Who's got for just $1 more to bid on this old violin? Where the air was hot and the people stood around as the sun was setting low. From the back of the crowd, a gray-haired man came forward and picked up the bow. He wiped the dust from that old violin, and then he tightened up the strings. And then he played out a melody pure and sweet, sweeter than the angels sing. And then the music stopped, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, he said, now what am I bid for this old violin, and he held it up with a bone. Then he cried out, one, give me 1,000. Who'll make it two? Only 2,000. Who'll make it three? 3,000 twice, you know, that's a good price. Now who's gonna bid for me? And the people cried out, what made the change? We don't understand. Then the auctioneer stopped and he said with a smile, it was the touch of the master's hand. We know there's many a man with his life out of tune, and he's battered and scarred with sin, and he's auctioned cheap to a thankless world, much like that old violin. But then the master comes, that old foolish crowd, they never understand the worth of a soul and the change that is wrought just by one touch of the master's hand. Again he cried out, one, give me 1,000. Who'll make it two? Only 2,000. Who'll make it three? 3,000 twice. That's a good price. Now who's gonna bid for me? And the people cried out, what made the change? We don't understand. Then the auctioneer stopped, and then he said with a smile, it was the touch. And that's all. It was the touch of the master's hand. It was the touch of the master's hand. Of the master's hand.
Well, you seem like such a serious person. What is it that you do for fun?
I used to play golf until I broke my clubs.
How'd you break your
I
clubs?
hit them with a tree.
You hit them with the
hit-
tree?
I hit one with the tree, yeah. You got a problem with that?
No, that's fine.
No, I used to play golf and I thought, you know, wait a second. I go to play golf to relax. I pay $30, $40 to play, and I come home more angry than when I left. What's the problem? And I figured that I just didn't want to play anymore because it didn't relax me. I can't really say what I do to relax or have fun. I mean, it turns some people off. I mean, I ride a motorcycle. Ooh, some people really have a problem with that. It's like they think you're a rebel, you know, and they put you in a package. And I ride a bike and go out in the country and ride, and I come home and I'm relaxed. I like to fish. Take my boys fishing every once in a while. We have a good time. Yeah. Lynn and I spent some days at home together this summer alone without the kids. They were off visiting my folks, and we really liked it. And so I think God prepares you, you know, as you raise children to be without them.
Well, this honesty that you're talking about between you and your wife, you think that's why you're able to write so open and honestly?
I don't know. I don't know why. Why does God put different people in different places with different attitudes? Why does God give certain people the ability to write songs of praise that I just stand in awe when I sing them and when I hear my congregation at home sing them, at the beauty? We will glorify the King of Kings. You know, songs like that, I just, And yet I tend to write about life as it is here. It's not always pretty. It's not always fun. I don't always like it. But if that's the role I'm here to play, is in a little bitty way, I'll do that. You know, that seems like that's where God has put me, and I'll do that. And I do think it comes out of an honest relationship with a girl that is committed to me, and I'm committed to her.